All right, episode 2. I'm on the road, as you can see. I'm in the van. I'm on like a hill, so I have to I'm on my desk sideways. I'm not just flat as I'd like.
Are you facing downhill or are you facing uphill?
I'm kind of facing just slightly downhill. Where I'm parked right now. So it's not ideal, but hey, you roll with it. So, the garage is behind me. My bikes are in there, and then my bed is up there behind that curtain. I'll spare.
Think you're gonna bust out a bike at some point?
I went for a bike ride yesterday on the American River bike path or bike trail here. It goes from Sacramento, California, all the way to Folsom Lake. It's 32 miles long, and it's along the American River the whole time. And it's just you pretty much never have to stop for 32 miles.
Wow.
So it's an easy way, and I'm close to it when I'm over here. Easy way to get a quick workout. And the sun was out, 60 degrees, which is, I've been in Portland the last few weeks where it's been like highs of 41. It was really awesome. So get some sun,
Dude,
so
that sounds great.
The van paying off. So.
Yeah. That sounds awesome.
And you got to come to Portland.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Got to get up there. It was awesome. I brought 2 of our youngest kids with us, and I think since we've been back, my youngest son has probably said 10 or 15 times, "I miss Oregon so much." Luke loved it there. So, man, it was a great visit. I just can't. I just can't get out of my head how tall and how big those trees were, because I'm just getting back to Central Texas. I can't even call them trees now, but they're just so underwhelming in comparison to the grandiose great Northwest.
Texas is a desert. Texans don't want to admit it, but Texas is mostly a desert.
Yeah,
with a few places where there's enough water for some oak trees occasionally, but.
I like the oak trees.
Cedars aren't trees. Dear Texas, cedars are not trees. Those are bushes.
Yeah.
And they're not
shrubbery.
Cedars either. They're mountain junipers.
That's exactly right. They are not trees.
In topography,
Satan's shrubbery due to the pollens.
You're in the hill country. Yeah, you're in the hill country, so you get some topography where most of Texas is pretty flat.
Yeah. Get up in the west, northwest. Just gets long and dry and flat and so boring.
The Panhandle.
Yeah, but great trip up there. It was great to get out and come visit and see you guys and just get a chance to see both Portland and just that Corvallis area. I loved Corvallis. That was
Corvallis
so cool.
Is a perfect little town. It's if you want to live in a perfect little town. I'm sure people that live there will be like, no, don't tell people this. It's not that great, but it is a perfect little town. Like, it's right sized. I mean, you've maybe heard that term 15-minute city. You ever heard that?
What is 15-minute city?
The concept of the 15-minute city is everything you need for daily life, your home, your work, your play, your consumption. So grocery shopping, restaurants, entertainment, everything is within 15 minutes of your house or where you live without using a private car. Right?
Yeah.
So there's public transport, there's pedestrian and bike infrastructure, but more importantly, things are close enough together and in the right distributions and places that's even possible. And a big chunks of Corvallis are basically a 15-minute city. And I think when people hear that, they think, well, it's got to be in New York. It's got to be skyscraper. No. You can make 15-minute cities, and it's wonderful. Like you forget about it. How just kind of going out, you're just more likely to run into people when you're in those environments. But when you have to drive everywhere, this is why the suburbs suck, and why we kind of ironically call our podcast Suburban Kings, is because there's this idea, and it's based on some truth, that there's not much culture in the suburbs.
Yeah.
Once you go there, if you've gone to the suburbs, you've kind of given up. Who are they? They had a whole album based on that whole concept. Why am I blanking?
Arcade Fire.
Arcade Fire, the suburbs.
May or may not be on a list we are going to be discussing here in a little bit.
So it's one of those things where, like, it does 15-minute city or just a livability is it's not what a lot of people think it is. They think it's all or nothing. If I want privacy and autonomy, I have to live in the suburbs. the cities are chaos, or if people live in the cities, it's like, well, how could you live out there in the middle of nowhere?
In the sticks.
It's a suburb. There's a happy medium, and I think Corvallis kind of hits that. But we got to go to the zoo. When was the last time we went to a good zoo?
Man, it's been a while, and that zoo was awesome. Yeah, right. we keep talking about the otters. That was a highlight when they came over and fed the otters the crabs, and my son kept talking about how they would grab one, swim along the glass, and just bang it against the glass to break the shell. That was super cool.
Otters are amazing.
That's an awesome zoo. The scenery. Animal. Yeah, that's a good spirit animal.
They play. They have fun. They're communal. They're really smart and adapt. So I love an otter. Zoos are underrated, man. There are some bad ones that kind of suck, but man, go to it's usually pretty cheap. Most zoos, a good zoo is by nature a nonprofit. A for-profit zoo, I can't imagine. That's called SeaWorld, and they're trying. I don't know the ethics top and bottom of a nonprofit zoo, but I assume most of them are trying to do more good than harm. So to get over the idea of animals being in captivity, why are they there, and what's the overall purpose? Hopefully, it's greater than that. Whatever. But going to the zoo is it's awesome. I love going to zoos.
The last zoo I think we may have went to is between Austin and San Marcos. They have a place called the Snake Farm. And
actually called the Snake Farm Zoo.
Well, I think the zoo was added as an afterthought because initially they bought like a 7-Eleven and outfitted it with a bunch of glass and put a bunch of pit vipers from around the world in it, which there was one moment we went in there and like one of the glass doors was slid half open, and I'm looking around the place like, there is a black mamba sliding around in here somewhere. But we went there. It's funny because I think growing up in high school, it was rumored that if you walked in there and you asked the guy behind the counter for change for 100, there was a trap door to a brothel somewhere in there. It was like, but that place is crazy because like all of the added animals are like an added afterthought behind like chicken wire and like shipping crates that they've just hammered together with found nails. Like I don't even know how they got all the paperwork done to keep that place in business, man.
It is sketchy. And I wonder if there's many states outside of Texas where that thing would be allowed. I've been there. I took my kids, and it is exactly like you say. It is like, are you allowed to do this? Like, it's kind of, I think Tiger King-esque.
It is. It's like the second cousin got inspired, his Texan cousin south of Oklahoma that just like went and was just trying to live up to the Tiger King.
It is straight weird.
It's like the snake gesture.
I highly recommend zoos, and check your zoo out. If it's a nonprofit, that's Snake Farm Zoo, obviously a for-profit. There's that aquarium in Austin that is constantly getting.
It's the same thing.
It's sketchy.
It is.
If it's for-profit,
it was like a mattress store shifted into a aquarium. Yeah, come on.
But yeah, if the pro tip is check the schedule, because if it's a good zoo, they tell you like when each animal has something going on, like they're going to feed them or there's an activity, and that's the way to roll. So, and then the other tip is go to the zoo when the weather's not great. When it's we go to the zoo when it's raining a little bit, and it's awesome. There's nobody there, and a lot of the animals, depending on your climate, they love it, and they're actually more active. So,
yeah. Well, I really liked your idea when we were there, spinning off of your check the schedule idea. I wish we could just like set up a hidden camera like episode where we find out the color and the style, or even just steal some of their uniforms and then walk around with like a metal pail and a bucket, and then see if we can just attract all of the animals at all the exhibits just because of the way we look, knowing that it's like feeding time,
Oh yeah. No, when you're sitting there watching an animal and it's just kind of sitting in the back of its pen. We rolled up on the like a leopard, and as we roll up there, it kind of starts making a move across the back of its area with intention. And then we moved over to the hyenas, and they're like pacing from spot to spot. And I've been in where I was at the San Diego Wild Animal Park at the Lions, and up against the glass, and the lion's kind of sitting off on a hill. It just makes a beeline for the glass. It looks like it's making a beeline for the glass, but it actually makes a turn the last minute to like this little door kind of airlock thing where the zookeeper was headed. And it turns out there was a zookeeper walking up behind me heading towards that door. So he assumed it's time to get a snack. So that's the plan. We dress up like zookeepers. And so when the animals see you, they come running over thinking it's snack time. Now, if that's torture or not, but that it could be the move to get
the best look at each of the animals. Maybe we could finally see the baby rhino, you know?
Yes.
That's the way.
See the baby rhino in Portland yet. So, but good move. So, well, let's jump in. So I saw one of the, I want to tick through the Golden Globe winners. And just because stage life and the travel I do this time of year, it's really tough for me to get to a movie theater. So I'm waiting for through the fall and winter. It's a terrible time for me to go to movies. I am trying to catch them on streaming, and Conclave made it to streaming, and I watched that this week. So if you're not familiar with that, John, it is Conclave is in this context, the word it's when the Catholic Church picks a new pope. Conclave is the process for picking a new pope when the pope dies or retires or what have you. And you probably remember from your days when that's happened. It's happened a couple times in our lifetimes, Gen Xers, and that the news is out there at the Vatican, and there's the black smoke and the white smoke that comes out of the little. There's all this stuff. So at its roots, is that a good substrate for a movie? There was the one, the Angels and Demons, and that Tom Hanks series based off the novel.
The Da Vinci Code.
One of them was based around Conclave. Yeah, Da Vinci Code was the first one. I think Angels and Demons was the one where it's happening during Conclave, and there's some shady doings. Yeah, this one's really interesting. It's almost in the vein of like 12 Angry Men, where it's a small cast, although there's, from what I understand, like 108 cardinals who are the College of Cardinals who will select the next pope based on votes and stuff like that. And there's, peripheral characters and those sorts of things. But the small handful of characters that you're focused on, it's 4 or 5 dudes, and they do an amazing job. So, the leads are Ralph Fiennes, who, I would say for me, like when I think of Ralph Fiennes, the first movie I think of is In Bruges, because he's kind of a third supporting actor, but he takes it over. But I think most people would currently think of the Grand Budapest Hotel. Okay. He's kind of the centerpiece character that's mentoring the young boy, and there's layers to that movie in terms of how the story's told. But I think a lot of people remember Ralph Fiennes from that, and of course Stanley Tucci. Is it there? And he's just elite Stanley Tucci. John Lithgow is in there as well. And then some other supporting actors, some people I have not really heard of or paid attention to, but just a really stellar job. So if you like, who's going to like this movie is people who like good acting, like a little bit of problem solving. There's kind of an underlying theme of detective work, because there's a few kind of mysteries, and maybe some things that have happened that some characters are trying to figure out. I was nervous as it got rolling, as the first act got rolling, and we kind of figured out where we are and who's who, that it was just going to be this, this guy against this guy and just a political thing. Which, if that's what it is, that's what it is. But it turned out to be much more nuanced than that. And it kind of takes you through a journey enough to where you kind of don't care about what the core theme is. And they're all up in the air. And then it lands with a surprise that is kind of a surprise. So it does this thing where, like, hey, you start to think, well, that thing's going to happen. Right. I mean, I don't want to get too.
It leads you in a certain direction.
There's kind of this mystery character that we don't know much about, and they do a good job of kind of making you think certain things about them.
Nice.
And the reveal is like, oh, see, I knew it. You're going to go, I knew it, right? About the reveal. And then in the midst of the reveal, there's a second reveal.
Oh.
And it's like, it is a
good twist.
Holy shit reveal.
Wow.
That you weren't even thinking about. You weren't even,
I love those.
Not for a second was that reveal on my mind. So it kind of throws you a bone, makes you feel good. Oh, I figured it out. Yeah, that's how it went. I knew that in the first act.
But it just nails you. And then it's like,
no, that's not the reveal. This is the reveal.
Nice.
And so to that end, the reveal is in a very politically hot topic right now in the United States. And here's the thing that surprised me. After I saw the movie, I'm going, how come I haven't heard a certain political party raging about this movie and its themes? Because it is a shot right across the bow of some certain political ideologies. And it handles it in such a beautifully nuanced way, not just like a F you and what you believe, and here's, I'm totally breaking things. It does it in a beautifully nuanced way. And I think that's why people aren't enraged about it, because you've actually watched this movie and it does. And I don't want to give away the reveal. If the political kind of football, if you will, that gets thrown at you at the end of the movie and the reveals, if that's a thing that bothers you, but you really paid attention and were with this movie in the scene as it goes through, if you're genuine about trying to understand, you can't be mad about it. If you're just mad, you're mad. So the reveal this is one where it could start some really healthy conversations with some families who have struggled with, political ideologies splitting them apart. I was not expecting that at all. And so what a surprise.
How does that help families that you said that are split? Like basically you got a brother and a sister on one side and the other, it'll help them?
It's hard to even get close to the issue here without completely giving away the surprise. Sure. It's so good, I don't want to ruin the movie for anybody.
Okay.
But, let's say global warming. It's not global warming. Let's say global warming's the issue. Yeah. And for a third of Americans, it's at least a third of Americans, it is just it's global warming isn't real, or what science says about it isn't real, or it's a conspiracy. There's a lot of people and logic and nuance did not bring them to that conclusion.
Sure.
They started from a posture of, in some cases, in evangelical space, the concept of rule and subdue, and there's an end times doctrine that the world is just going to fall apart, so who cares anyway? There's a bunch of things that aren't logic that brings someone to a climate change is not real type of situation. And you've probably seen fights with friends and arguments with friends and family where someone's trying to explain the logic of it. Hey, there's more nuance to that, because someone will say, well, why is it snowing in Louisiana? The globe isn't warming. That's not. So that's an issue of the branding of it from 40 years ago. Global warming was the wrong. The globe is warming, but if you say global warming, they get stuck to that. And so they, so you have an issue like that in this movie where logic didn't bring them to the answer, but what if you could explain global warming in a way that had sound logic, had a real human story attached to it, but also addressed the nuance and some of the emotional attachment someone might have to an argument against the fact that climate change is real. I don't know if that exists, but that's kind of how this goes. Like if someone can't understand the issue from a new perspective after watching this movie, there's no hope of them ever understanding the issue, because the issue here is so big within the universe in terms of just the spectrum of things. Nuance is so important, and it's powerful, and it's thrown right in the middle of a church, a movie about the Catholic Church. So really cool. I was happy I saw Conclave, but it brought up a thing, because some of the actors in there. It is a question for you to kind of get you in on this conversation. Movies where the core of the movie is set in a reality where the main, and I'm speaking as a United States, North American English speaker primarily and only really, movies where it's set in a context where English is not the language, where do you stand on? Do we need subtitles? Should we have some kind of accent? So we just ignore it. What movies have done it well and poorly in your mind when it comes to an English speaking audience is going to watch a movie that is not in the English speaking space, and they deal with it in different ways.
Yeah. If I'm catching your question, one of right off the bat, the first thing that comes to my mind is Squid Games.
Right.
The way that they handle this, because
I've not watched a single Squid Game.
Okay. So what they do is it's done, Japanese, I think it's recorded there. And so they just do a voiceover. So, the dudes are talking, but you get these American type accents over the guys. And so they don't really fit, but they fit. I don't know. But it also plays into the show itself. So it's like, it works. But if it was to it, you get used to it. But there's times where you watch it, you're like, oh man, like, can we just have subtitled this? Like these voices
an old kung fu movie, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one way. Yeah. The kung fu
that's
movie.
One way.
The voiceover, the dub.
Yeah. And it's like, if you're going to do it, just do it and let it be what it is. Don't try to like find the best voices to match just let it be kind of campy. Yeah. But I think subtitles it's just the way to go. Because I think it captures the inflections, the tones, I don't know, man. What other example can you think of where you've seen it and it's really worked?
How do we, some movies will address it and then use some kind of mechanism to just shift the movie to English because it's American actors doing foreign. So I think one of the ones that comes to mind immediately is The Hunt for Red October. Mm. So whether we're in Russia and things first get going, everyone is speaking Russian with subtitles. Mm-hmm. And then Captain Ramius goes in his cabin with the KGB guy. And the way they transition to English is that the KGB guy is reading something out of a Bible. Mm-hmm. And he reads it in English. Yeah. And then when he closes the Bible... Shifts. Yeah. The rest of the movie is English, with a few scenes aside. And so
there was another movie.
So,
The 13th Warrior, I think it was, with Antonio Banderas. Did you see? Okay. There was a movie where I think he's like he's like a fighter, and he's with a different tribe, and he picks up on the language, and so it's subtitled until he gets it and starts speaking it, and it shifts over. And they said, at one point they say, "Oh, you speak our language? How did you learn our language?" He goes, "I listen." And so that was like it from there on out. Yeah. So they did that in that movie too.
Well, Conclave
and that was cool.
Did a hybrid, which I liked. So there is a show on Netflix. I'll get to that in a second. But Conclave just does a hybrid because your lead actors are English speakers. Okay. So Ralph Fiennes, Stanley Tucci, John Lithgow. But then there's kind of the secondary actors, and they bounce around. So a lot of your Catholic stuff is going to happen in Latin. So they're giving you subtitles. And even our main characters are doing some Latin. So they're giving you some subtitles. But the Italian actors, the key Italian actor or actors is a native Italian, born in Italy. That's his language. And he bounces around between Italian with subtitles, Latin with subtitles, and speaking English. And it's done really well to where you don't tend to worry about it too much. I like those hybrids.
That's cool.
Because sometimes when you get... The other option is take an English-speaking actor and force them to have an accent that isn't theirs. And some do it horribly.
Yeah,
like
right.
The first one always comes to mind is Mary Poppins. What's his name? He plays the chimney sweep guy. Accents. Like I've seen videos online where what's the worst accent, English accent from English people that an American has done in movies, and it's always him. Always that one.
I can't think of his name either. Gosh.
Dick Van Dyke. Dick Van Dyke's English accent in Mary Poppins is largely considered the worst English accent done by him. But there's a show on Netflix called Lillehammer, really not someone, a show I don't hear a lot of people talking about. It's older. I think it's done. It just had 3 seasons, but it is almost entirely Norwegian actors. And an American actor is the lead, and he's there on the witness protection program. So the context of the language situation makes sense. And he's you're kind of learning Norwegian alongside him as he's trying to figure it out. So he speaks English, tries to speak Norwegian. The Norwegian actors speak Norwegian a lot, but they'll go to English. So you get this hybrid. And that's kind of how this one was. I think that's ideal in a blended environment.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes they just totally brick it. Like, famously in the Kevin Costner Robin Hood. His accent after about the first act just kind of goes away. And it's just an English accent. Like he gave up on it or something. I'm tired of it. Or, that one. But yeah, it's, or in, was it U571 where one of Bon Jovi's, he tried to be an actor for a little bit there. And I think it's U571 where they're training. It's the first, the Germans had submarines first. And so they're training to capture this submarine and then drive it, right? And they do all this training for weeks or months or whatever. And they get in there and they are surprised by the fact that all the labels and everything on the controls are in German. Like,
how do we drive this thing?
Like if I was watching that movie on a laptop back in the day, I might have had to throw it across the room. Like, really? Like,
it's like every guy in a Guitar Center trying to figure out how to get the different sounds on the different amps, just flipping switches and turning knobs,
just going Tourette's on it. So that's probably the bottom of the barrel. But yeah, I'm always curious how they handle language in movies. I think a really good example on subtitles is Narcos was on Netflix, or I think it was on Netflix. Right. Narcos, and it was written and directed for English speaking audience. So the way the subtitles are in it, and because it's heavily subtitled, 80% of any given episode is subtitled. The dialogue lends itself to that, right? Yeah. Sometimes if the subtitles are an afterthought, it can be a bit of it's more work to keep up, or sometimes it doesn't align from a terms of cadence and those sorts of things. But yeah, lots of, I always like to see the creative way people do a language. In Conclave, they did a good job. So
that sounds good.
I highly recommend this movie. It's not a big rewatchable joint, just because what makes it so good is the reveal, but the acting in it is really well done. Ralph Fiennes, Stanley Tucci are just all-time greats, and they're in their bag in this one. So
sometimes in a crazy reveal movie, it's worth just a second watch, unless you're introducing it to somebody, maybe a third, but a second where you can see how they construct it all and build it all and lead you in the directions to to get to that point where you can catch the nuances of the things that you missed the first go around.
Yeah.
That can always be fun.
Agree with that. I agree with that. All right. So
that was pretty cool. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that was pretty cool. And on the visit, we got a chance to watch the 3 billboards.
Yes. What'd you think of 3 billboards? Micro movie review right now.
Yeah.
First time you've seen it.
Man, yeah, great character development in that movie. Those characters are amazing. Like they just build these very good characters. And that was probably my favorite part of it. And then, just the ending. I was like, oh man, it just ended. Oh, I wanted to see how this was going to go, and in that leaving you
resolution.
Yeah. And you wanted the part that I didn't quite catch at the end of like, okay, are they going to get the guy? But the cop said it wasn't the guy. So it was like, that's the part that left me unresolved a little bit that I missed. I missed how, if the movie did any part, if they wanted me to feel that way or So overall though, man, great movie, great character development, great story, awesome usage of just the soundtrack. And I love how it was set in that town, the setting. It was great. Right. It was awesome. I loved it.
It is, like I said, easily one of the best movies, if not the best movie of the last 10 years. For me personally, that's my opinion. I love Martin McDonagh, and this is just an all-time great. And it was on its way to sweeping Best Picture across all 3 awards, Screen Actors Guild, Golden Globes we just had, and the Oscars. It ended up, because of what you said, because it's, you have a character who by all means he's a racist, and we have some backstory that we don't get to see. It's just insinuated through it that he's done horrible things, or at least a horrible thing, in the name of racism, or at least we're led to kind of believe that, and we don't know, but he is arcing. We do see him in taking small steps towards being a better person.
Yeah.
And so I think people were mad that he didn't seem to receive justice for what we think were his crimes.
Yeah.
But I think that overall theme is, yes, we need justice for people, but we also need to give people space to become better people. And it's because it doesn't resolve. I think that's what made people mad. And just in the moment, you're kind of in the middle of Trump and just kind of the racism issue, and racial justice issue was really hot. And so that's what happens with the Oscars. It didn't end up winning because of that. But in reality, any other year or a few years previously, it would have, because it's not a horrible message. It's not. I don't think it is a racist message. It's just because it's unclear, and typical moviegoers want, one nice bow on top, and they want things to resolve. Because it didn't, people were just upset, and I think that's a bummer.
Yeah, right.
It's okay for a movie not to resolve. Yeah. Some of the best movies of all time don't resolve. They leave you thinking. That's what I want. That's art. It's called art, people. It's called art. So.
And growing up as a big fan of the Choose Your Own Adventure books, it doesn't affect me to the point where I just am so mad, because it's part of choosing your own adventure too. Like, it's like, hey, we could play this out a whole bunch of different ways.
Yeah. No, like, one of the best movies of all time, No Country for Old Men, does not resolve in a nice, tidy way, the way some people might want it to. So, there you go. All right. So you had homework last week.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You were supposed to pick a classic book of some kind for us to read. Novel, one of the classics people often talk about, and many of us, maybe we read them in high school, some of them as far back as elementary school or college, and we never touched them again, but they're part of our just the conversation of humans worldwide, some of these books. So you tasked with pick one. What'd you go with? Tell me about it.
Yeah. So, man, I feel like this is a book that just keeps getting brought up over and over, currently and through the years. And I feel like I just totally missed it, which I did. In high school, our English teacher, and alongside the other English teacher, our teacher went with like To Kill a Mockingbird, and the other teacher went with this book. And so, going all the way back to high school, it wasn't a mandatory read, but it was for the other parallel class with the other English teacher. And so I think with how it just keeps getting brought up over and over, just to me, I'm curious to see how it can lead to the thinking of where we are now in relation to politics and advancements in technology and control and manipulation. And so I feel like it's important for me to go back, and I need to read it. I need to read George Orwell's 1984.
That's within your first sentence. That's what I guessed. I feel the same way. I have not read it. I did see I did see a funny Instagram about someone said, the American oligarchs are not reading our dystopian novels for what they are. They're reading them as business plans.
See, and this is why I feel like it's important to just culturally just kind of get these connections on where he was going with this book and why people keep bringing it up. And I feel like I'm missing something.
it's one of those books where, like a lot of books that have such a deep, they're taking a deep stab at society. This one in particular, what's weird is people from seemingly completely different points of view will use the same quote or same concept from 1984 in different, pick something out of it and use it to support their point of view on an issue, and they can take it from completely different sides. It's crazy. So yeah, no, I haven't. I think that's a great call. That's very in the zeitgeist of the moment.
Yeah,
I'm down to read it, so I'm going to buy that today.
Sweet.
Buy that today.
Awesome.
And
get going.
Try to read it. I'm going to try to read it by next week. Let's see if we can get it done.
Yeah, I think it's 300 plus.
I got to read books fast or I give up. Like if I drag it out, so I got to go hard. So we'll see, because I have some homework for you. That'll be easier at the end of it. So, but classic novel, 1984. If you're listening, read along with us.
Yeah,
we'll try to read it over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to that. Good call.
Sweet. Awesome. I was assuming you've probably read it multiple times, or like, no, I was a little worried that you're gonna be like, oh man, come on.
No. It's. I mean, it's a heavy read. It's got some heavy stuff. It's not, similar to like Brave New World. Like it's not light reading. It's not. You don't have to think real hard to read it. So it reads well. But but like I said, I definitely have not read that since the mid '90s. So
it's either that or The Art of War. But no.
Well, you don't really read The Art of War. It's just a series of poems. Which I have. That's one you keep in the bathroom. I keep like The Other King and The Art of War in the bathroom, because you could just open any page and read some verses and you get some good nuggets. Yeah. So, all right. So I am, during this season, basketball season, I drive a lot. I did 8,000 miles on the road between November and December. So about 1,000 miles a week, which for some people, like I have a brother who works in a role where he drives a lot, and that's just he does over 100,000 miles a year, so it's not a big deal. But for me, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So I've always had lots of albums that are my go-tos when I'm on the road. So music is how I get down the road, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to find out what our top 10s are for road trip albums.
Okay.
Road trip albums. So your 10, my 10. We'll do a draft. Road trip albums. And so the way I think about an album on a road trip is I listen to a lot of hard music and I listen to a lot of really soft music, but I tend to shy away from some of those on the road. I need something that has enough dynamics to kind of lock me in. Usually when I'm listening to an album, it's because I'm driving by myself or my wife or everyone else is sleeping. If we're having good conversation, it doesn't matter. I put whatever on, or if I'm gonna kind of talk, like when my wife and I go somewhere for a quick drive, I'll just put on like a radio station on Spotify, or I'll select songs or do some shuffles and things like that just to have some music on. But when I'm listening to music, when I'm going down the road, it's albums, because it helps pass the time, because I could burn, depending on how long the album is, 40 minutes, hour, maybe longer. That whole hour seems to go by fast. And so I like music that I can sometimes just listen to, sometimes sing along with, and just kind of groove, but not quite dance music. So that's kind of where I am. So I like it. I use it to kind of pass the time. So it has to be good songs. Good sonics usually aren't enough. For me. That's kind of how I look for an album. What's kind of your framework for road trip album?
Yeah, I think depending on where I'm going, can affect what I'm listening to, depending on what direction I'm going. Like if I'm looking out the window and it's hill country, or if I'm by a coast, or if I'm hitting that flat West Texas, or so some of the scenery, or going into the city, driving through the city can be a road trip, and then weather plays a part in it. If it's kind of dreary and kind of cold and misty, and it's just like I'm moving slower, it's hard for me to shift to just an upbeat or a heavy, metal or, or if it's just sunny and I've got the windows rolled down and those things play into the mood of okay, I got to put this on. Like, I get a feel.
I feel that. Yeah. What energy do I need right now? I think that goes for all music. Like, what do I need at all times? What do I need right now?
Totally.
It's a good point. That's
dude. I was listening to, here's a pro tip. Don't listen to metal when you're stuck in traffic. I had just this epiphany where maybe I was listening to too much metal, but I was cruising down. I can't say cruising down. I was stuck in this Mopac traffic in Austin. It's just the worst road in Austin where it doesn't move. And I had metal going and I'm getting cut off and I'm stopping, I'm going. And eventually, dude, I just reached up and I punched my rearview mirror and it came off. And I was like, I sat there and I was like, immediately regretted it. And I had this moment of like, what? How did this just happen? Like
Where am I right now?
Yeah, I completely lost control. I turned the music off, take a deep breath, and I was immediately ashamed. And then I went to AutoZone and bought the window glue to glue the thing back on, and it was just tail between my legs. Like I was a victim of my own road rage. How did that happen? Okay, anyways.
In traffic, it's reggae. So I keep like a Barrington Levy radio in my library on Spotify so I can quickly grab the best reggae. That's traffic music for me. I'm going reggae. Occasionally, if it's traffic and it's a nice day and it's not like, like on a weekend and there's traffic, I might listen to some hip hop, some chill hip hop, like some MF Doom or something like that.
Sweet.
Good stuff. So the draft. All right. As always, I always give John first pick in the drafts. I got my short list.
Cool.
So it's pretty good. I probably have 20-ish albums on there. Definitely not going to catch everything, but I know there's going to be some defensive picks in here, which probably is going to be the top of the draft board is going to be defensive picks. So, John, what is your number one pick in the road trip album draft?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a particular order on this because again, it's mood.
No,
and it's vibe.
But if you pick it, I can't. So that's the beauty of this because we're picking art, right? Yeah. And I would say there's probably 3, 4, 5 albums that we would both consider in our personal top 10s. I bet.
Yeah. Okay.
And the other half are going to be completely wild, and neither of us are going to have those on our short list because you're probably going to have some country on there, and I can tell you right now, 0 country in my short list. So.
Okay. I'm going to go with Films About Ghosts, Counting Crows compilation album.
Oh. Are we allowed to do greatest hits on this?
Well, for me, it's just because I could. That's a whole album right there. And greatest hits, I feel like greatest hits were bigger in like the 90s, the 80s. They kind of fade. I feel like they've kind of faded a little bit when they used to sell the albums and it was like a deluxe album. And I don't know if I reached so much for the greatest hits, but this is one that I think
I'm gonna make a ruling on the field.
Okay,
and I'm not gonna allow this pick.
Oh,
this is a greatest hits album. This is a greatest hits.
Okay,
because I could pick Billy Joel's greatest hits.
yeah,
but that's not an album. That doesn't mean you can't play it on a road trip. I just don't think it qualifies for the draft.
I got you. So I'm just gonna go with August and Everything After.
I'm mad.
Is this on your? Is this
yesterday on a drive?
Oh, okay.
I would say that is often. It's rare I go on a road trip of 3 or more hours, and that album doesn't get played. In fact, there's only 2 albums pinned. You could pin an album in your library. So when I open my library in any app, whether I open in CarPlay or on my phone or my computer, there's 2 albums that are at the top, and that's one of them. So I can always grab that one without even looking. It's like touch on my car screen, ding, 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 and it's playing because it's Why? Tell me about your Counting Crows on the road.
Oh man, it's It's so like emo in a way where it just pulls your emotion strings. It gets you in those feels where it's just like, kind of melancholy, you're feeling kind of bluesy within yourself, and just the angst of the struggle in your life, and just the hardships. And it reaches those places and kind of sings to it. And makes you feel those things. And a lot of times, when you're cruising, you're sorting that stuff out. You're
right.
Maybe you've got stuff on the back burner in your life. And when you get on the road and you get in the scenery, and your perspective changes, because I think that's one of the things about a road trip is literally your vision is enlarged. It's good for the human soul to see scenery bigger than you're used to seeing. And so it allows for your big problems to all of a sudden start shrinking in a way for you to just kind of feel it, kind of put it out there, to be with it, to sit with it. And I just think there's something good about that, and sometimes it can go the other way. It can pull you deeper in it. And it can get a little sketchy there. But at the same time, I think it's good to feel it. I think it's good to sort it out. I think it's good to just put it out there, to be with it, and, for it to do whatever it needs to.
This album, time and time again, I'm talking with people and they're like, this is in my top albums, but you never hear it. Specifically Gen Xers. You don't hear people talking about it in terms of greatest albums of all time. Like it's the weirdest album in that realm, in that conversation of it is one of the greatest albums of all time, but it's never talked about. I think people just didn't take Counting Crows seriously. Maybe it was, you hear more about the Gin Blossoms and I'm trying to think other kind of in that light pop,
I want to put
of the mid-90s.
The Wallflowers in there.
Wallflowers, they had 2 songs, but you hear more about them. Oasis, which is kind of more Britpop, but in the same vein. Obviously they were the biggest, but where's Counting Crows in that conversation? Matchbox 20, where it kind of shifted from alternative to just bar bands, But man, this album, it has everything. It takes you just through a journey, which I think is what I really love about a road trip album. It takes me through a musical journey and keeps going. And I often tell people, and it's a great song, Mr. Jones, but people who never really got into Counting Crows because maybe they were just classic rock heads and they never went for it. The only song they know is Mr. Jones. And I tell people all the time, give him a chance, because that's a great song, but it's the worst song on the album.
Right.
Great album. Love we need a study on this album.
Yeah, but also you gotta work in Colorblind though, because that's one of the songs that just when it came out, it's just never, not been a powerful song that just grabs you.
Yeah, I like the ones. My favorite song of theirs not on this album would be "Long December."
Oh gosh, yeah, come on, yeah,
great album. But yeah, no, just kind
of. And I
saw
them in concert, and it was awesome.
Yeah, same. I've seen them live. One time, I won tickets on a radio station thing in Austin, back when radio stations were a thing. So
sweet.
All right. So my number one pick, then that makes it easy for me. It's just the other album that's always pinned and always ready to go. And you know what it is. I don't even have to say it. It's OK Computer.
Oh, yeah. Come on.
From Radiohead.
Yeah, that's there. I'm going to scratch that off my list.
It is, for my money, one of the top 5. This is Desert Island Disc for me. Top 5 all time. Listen to it. In my car that I have an older car that doesn't have a CD player anymore. We swapped it out, but it used to have a CD player in it. And the only CD that was in my car since shifting to full-time streaming was, in case there was an internet issue and you couldn't stream something, was OK Computer, just in its case in the car. And I think it's the only CD that's not in deep storage. It's just sitting in my office. It's got everything. It has some hard rock and stuff, some really contemplative stuff, some stuff that's just great to sing along on, takes you through emotions, takes you through just so many dynamics. It's just a complete album, which I think is a hallmark of a good road trip album like August and everything after. And an even touch, if you're just a sonic nerd and you want the sonics and the musicianship and just the virtuosity, it's there too. But it's not not what I'm listening to it for when I'm on the road. I want great songs and OK Computer, top to bottom, that certified banger. That's my number one.
So good.
In the road trip.
That's great.
Draft.
That's so good. Well, since you took that one, this is a little questionable. No, I'm just going with it. My second one, because OK Computer's off the board, is I'm going in Rainbows. Radiohead.
Easy pick.
Just, so many of their albums, there's times where I'll reach for Pablo Honey, just because of the vibes that come off of that album that are just totally different. But in Rainbows, there's so many songs on there that I get lost in, or that just I can cruise to, and it just goes from song to song. And very rarely when I have that album on and I am road tripping, am I going to reach to try to skip it. I'll just listen to front to back, and it's so
that's really it. That's kind of the hallmark of a road trip album. You're not hitting the skip button. You're listening top to bottom. Now in Rainbows, again, that's one of the ones that over the years it starts moving up my list, of all time albums. It's still, I don't foresee it taking OK Computer off the top step, but man, they could end up being 10 years from now my top 2 favorite albums. In Rainbows is an absolute certified banger that everyone needs to be listening to on the regular. Love that album. I might pin In Rainbows in my library. We'll see. All right.
Heck
yeah.
So
I think I gotta throw down at least one more defensive pick before I start to get into the deeper catalog, because just seeing where things are going and knowing you. So I'm gonna have to grab. There's probably 3 on here that are just in danger of being scooped up by John in my short list. But I'm gonna go with John Mayer, Continuum.
Oh,
see, I know that's on your short list. So we talked about it. It was funny. We talked about it in the guitar album draft.
Yeah.
It's not just a guitar album. They are great songs. Like this is, it's dynamic. It takes you on a journey. It puts visuals in your head and allows you to just kind of disassociate and drive. It's got stuff to sing along with, the emotional stuff. It's got the love songs, the love lost, the some political tones, just some fun tones, and just some philosophical ideas. It's just all over the place in such a good way, and connects really well.
And that's so good. And his guitar playing, like you said, is just arguably unmatched within his, within that genre, within our 20 years. I don't know of just pure blues / the way he's worked it into a mainstream. It's not just like the old school bluesy where he works it in, and he just wails. So
it could be the last guitar album. It could be the last great guitar album. The guitar featuring in that kind of way in music that makes it, and that's popular, is kind of when it really started to go away. This might be the last one. We might never see that again. Although we're predicting we might see some guitar this year.
I hope so.
All right.
I hope so.
So your number 3 pick.
Okay. Okay. This. I don't think this is in danger of getting scooped up by you. I had a time in my life where, and I saw him in concert 2 or 3 times, and his albums maybe just was a central Austin, but I'm sure he made his way. But man, I went back and listened to this not too long ago. I was driving out to Marble Falls, nearby city, and back, and I put it on. I was like, man, I forgot how good this is. But I'm just gonna put this on there as a personal pick. I'm going Crash by Dave Matthews Band.
Oh, nothing wrong with that.
I like the way that they work in so many other different instruments, and arguably, I don't know. His drummer is amazing. And
I love his drummer.
So good. And I don't know if there's a dude who has more toms and cymbals in a set than that guy. Like,
Perfect.
I mean, it's 40 toms and 60 cymbals and 8 kick drums. Like, when you watch him play, he's like an he's like an octopus in there. Just
he's got. I think he reminds me of Chad Smith, where the groove is front and center. The groove matters, and then just putting just enough creativity on it without just going full ridiculous, just filling all over the place. Just the groove. He's got a groove that matters, and so that is just ever present in his drumming. So some of those songs, like Where Are You Going? I like that song just for his drumming. Just the group is it's perfect.
Yeah, and I go back and listen. It grabs me. But then what's that giant saxophone? Is it the bass sax or is it the alto sax?
It's called the bass sax.
Bass sax.
Yeah.
So bass sax, him or Bon Iver, those two guys work that bass sax in. And I'm wondering if there could be like a showdown to see better usage of it. And then also, that the way that the fiddle player plucks his fiddle and plays the fiddle. Yeah. I just, man, it's good music, and I mean, Dave's kind of funky, I think he for me lost his flavor. He got a little too mad in his own right, but that album is a classic for me. When I put it back on, I found myself, it was familiar. There was a nostalgia to it that I hadn't listened to it for so long. When I put it back on, I was like, okay, this is really good. Like, because maybe it was so familiar for me, it all came back all at once. And I was finding myself loving it. So I just got to put that on there.
In that realm, because you mentioned Jeff Coffin did because their original horn player, I believe he died, right? And Jeff Coffin took over at some point. And Jeff Coffin is a session guy, virtuoso on the wind instruments, specifically reed instruments, woodwinds, and is, in my world, is best known for playing with Bela Fleck and the Flecktones. And I've seen them live a couple times. They have an album that is an honorable mention. I'll mention it now, and it's called Live at the Quick. It's them live, and they're at their best live. It's a jam band, so take that for what it's worth. It's jam band space. A lot of the songs have no words, so it's the only reason it's not really for me, it's not a great road trip album. But man, it is a great listen. Bela Fleck and the Flecktones Live at the Quick. If you're a jam band guy and you haven't, or you like the Dave Matthews and you want to kind of step your game up, Jeff Coffin did. I saw him live twice with that band. Phenomenal horn player. Good call. I don't mind Dave Matthews. I think that's perfect for road trip. You can sing along to that. It's got the groove. Got some hits on there.
Yeah,
love it. Good call. No Dave Matthews in my short list. So then I am going to go for, again, I'm going to pick my next pick is, I've come, this artist is one, sometimes I just put radio on, or I just go to an artist and I just hit the first track, and on Spotify, it'll just play that artist. It'll just keep going. I don't know what the algorithm is for what the order of how it plays songs, but the order stays somewhat consistent. I think the artist can maybe pin some stuff in there. So if they have a new track out, it's usually on there. So it's not always like their best stuff. It's kind of a combination of it. And this artist I'll throw in there all the time, because this artist is, in the last 15 years, just been such a go-to, not just for me, for my family. This is the ambient sound of the Murat house if you come over. And this is the album that is, just no skips on this album. That's Cease to Begin by Band of Horses.
Yeah, I saw that coming. Dang it.
Just such a good album. One of those albums, like I said, I think it's early on when we were buying an album digitally. We weren't subscribing yet to music when I think that came out in like 2008.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Begin. And I was listening to All Songs Considered on NPR. I think of the podcast. Yeah, 2007. So it was when it came out. And they played "Is There a Ghost," which is the opening track on it. Yeah. And I remember hearing, because their other big hit was featured in a skate video, a very popular skate video from a year before. And so that, I knew it, but I was never really dug into the band, because digging into a band cost more back then. You had to go to a store, or you had to buy an album. You couldn't just go sample some stuff and put them in your rotation. Yeah. But when I heard "Is There a Ghost," I immediately went in at that time. I think we were in iTunes for buying music. Bought that whole album, and it's been a constant rotation ever since. Awesome album, front to back. Could sing along. Got upbeat, downbeat. Emotional visuals. Just in good musicianship, just good songs. I love Band of Horses.
Heck yeah.
That's my number 3 pick.
That's great.
What do you got for number 4, John?
Oh man. Well, I feel like it's gonna go, and I just don't really know which one to go with. But I gotta take a Bon Iver album, just because it's gonna go. I want to say "For Emma Forever Ago." I'm just gonna take that one, although all of them are great. I didn't get into some of his newer stuff. You did a good job of sticking with him, but I'm going with that. Just like the way you described Band of Horses, minus I didn't go buy the album right away. It's been on constant rotation along so many of his others. I wish there was a greatest hits, and I wish I could take it, but I'm going with that.
No, I totally good pick. I love Bon Iver, and they're an artist of all of their albums. I think are great road trip albums. All of their entire catalog, any one of those, and that's just, I think that's how they make their music. Like they're not concept albums per se, but they're constructed in the old way of making albums, which is, the order of the songs, what songs are on there. It's a journey. And, like when you think of their self-titled one, the first 3 songs are almost a medley. They blend together. There's no gap in the track. It just keeps playing as if it's one song, although it's 3 songs. So you can tell that they think through their album. So just the layers,
and it's just, I can't put it into words, but the way they layer it up, and the melodies and the sounds, and it just, oh man, come on.
You have elite musicianship and really good songs, and you put those together, and that's, like you said, it's a lot like Band of Horses. It leans a little bit more towards the musicianship side, and is a little bit more out there. But man, not too much, not for me. I dig it. I'll take it every time, twice on Sunday. All right, so my number 4 pick in the road trip album draft is singles, Future Islands.
Yeah.
Love this album. I got to be honest, I have not gotten into their broader catalog. I've tried. I've listened to everything they've ever put out, but I just keep coming back to this album. It's just different. It's similar to like August and Everything After from Counting Crows. No other album of Counting Crows ever did it for me. They're not bad, but man, they nailed it on this one. I think it's their 3rd or 4th album, even their 5th, and they nailed it, at least for me. And sonically, it's got everything. And it's hard to describe Future Islands, and I think it is polarizing. Like, people really dig it, or they just absolutely can't stand it. And it is different. I've tried, if they had come out in 1980, 81, kind of as Talking Heads, and that whole movement in New York is taking off,
I could see that.
They would have been right in there, would have fit right in. It's basically, there's no guitar. It's a bass, synth, drums, and vocalist. And it is, just a great album. Like, you can sing along, you can jam. It's got, upbeat jams. It's got some real contemplative stuff. It's just, I dig it. And so that it's a go-to all-time disc for me. Singles, Future Islands, number 4.
Yeah. Heck yeah, man. I love that album too. It's just, man, come on. I'm trying to think of which album. There's a few that I really liked, and I feel like I need to go back and make sure I'm picking the right one. But I gotta take Wilco off the list here. Because that's just good road tripping music. I mean, and to me,
short list.
Huh? What's that?
I have some Wilco in my short list.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know if it's Yankee Foxtrot, or man, I'm drawing a blank. I got to look at the list of albums and the songs. Because for me, I listened to Wilco at the time. I was working at Starbucks and I was getting into them because they were on the Starbucks rotation, and they had this thing at Starbucks where.
When did you work? What year did you work at Starbucks?
Man, I worked there a long time. I worked there from 2001 to 2010. And they had this kiosk. You could
probably Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. It's their most popular album.
That's what I meant to say.
People say that in my world say is their most popular. Yeah.
But what happened was they had a kiosk where you could walk up and hit the buttons. It was a CD burning kiosk. Super cool. It was like a vending machine. You walk up to it, you search the musician, and it'll bring up the albums, and you pick the songs, and the songs were priced, and it was based on the size of the songs and the size of the CD, like the memory. And so the songs were like 99 cents. And so I got a couple of coupons for we would hand out to customers, and I went and used it like for a promo code, and I got a couple free albums. And so I put together like a bunch of Wilco on there. So I was just pulling and grabbing from like the albums that were available at the time. And so that's when I put it in my vehicle when I was commuting around, I had like mostly Wilco, and that's why I was getting the albums confused. But aside from that, just their music. And to me, like when it comes to country, there's hints of country in it for me that makes me categorize it as, and that's the kind of country music that I like. It's got the steel, it's got the slide, it's got the acoustics, it's got the twang. It's got even some of the drum, rhythms to it where, it has the hints of country that I can relate to, aside from it just takes all the pop off of it. And it, reaches into like, as I'm driving around a central Texas, it's perfect to put on. It just matches the topography that I'm driving on in the hill country so well. It makes me feel, just it's great road tripping music.
It's Wilco is special. Their existence is a unique period in time and a snapshot of what has happened with music, or at least how we listen to music, and specifically radio. So Wilco is rising up as radio is starting to die. So they form and start playing locally in Chicago in 1994, and radio is kind of peaking right about then, 94, 95, 96. By then, Clear Channel's pretty much by 97, 98 bought everything, and there really isn't any meaningful independent radio anymore. And so your opportunity to discover Wilco really kind of shifts. If you're trading music with friends, but they're not going to be on the radio. They're certainly not going to be on a Clear Channel, national level radio. So I often told people as Wilco was coming up in the early 2000s this is probably the most successful band you haven't heard of. Right? They're doing well. They're selling out the venues they're playing in. They're putting out killer albums. They're incredible musicians. But but they never got the radio hits. They're never going to play a stadium. But man, they got that cult following. But at the same time, they're not niche. They're not like this little niche thing. So when I'm talking to that guy, and this is the guy that's always in the back of my mind when I'm talking, because I don't want to become this where I gave up on listening to music and I only listened to what was on in high school. So the guy that's stuck on, classic rock or maybe 90s rock or even 80s rock. And I'm like, especially classic rock and 90s rock, I'm like, have you given Wilco a try? It's usually what I try to put them on. So if they're in my car, I'm going to put some Wilco on. Great band, really successful, continue to do great things. But yeah, they're just a little bit different, but not so different. I think they're very listenable. Love Wilco.
Yes, sir. Good take.
So yeah, definitely highly recommend for your homies that are stuck on classic rock. Put them on the Wilco, see how they do. All right, so the road trip album draft. My number 5 pick is this album's got it all. It's got some dancey tracks. It's got some hip hop. It's got some gospel. It's got some rock, but most of all, it's just got banger after banger, and it's very dynamic and all over the place. And that is Plastic Beach by Gorillaz.
Oh,
yeah. Nice. Yeah, love that album. It is my favorite Gorillaz album. I know most people are like the older stuff because they had bigger hits, Clint Eastwood, Feel Good Inc. and stuff.
Yeah.
Those were bigger hits, but this is a better album. And I find I've met people who haven't really listened to much Gorillaz, so they're maybe a little bit older and they missed out on those big hits. Because again, those were kind of the last gasps of radio when those albums came out.
Yeah.
And Blur became the Gorillaz, basically.
Yeah.
And so they missed out on this album. This album kind of dropped maybe I should know this. It's on the World Wide Web.
Yeah, which song was it that had the car chase with Bruce Willis in the video?
That's Stylo.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, 2010, this comes out, and yeah, your radio's dead. So if you weren't paying attention or you didn't have channels for discovering this kind of music, you might have missed this album. And I've played it for a lot of people, and they're like, it is, man, if you want to hear everything that the Gorillaz are, this is it. It's fantastic.
Heck yeah.
It's got some stuff you can sing along to. It's got just interesting
creative
tones. Yeah. It's just different, a lot of different voices. And of course, Damon Albarn he's one of those guys. Whatever he's doing, I'm in. I'm going to check it out. And so just one of the great performers and artists of our generation. Love his stuff. Plastic Beach, Gorillaz. That's my number 5 pick.
That's great. Great pick, man. I was living in Colorado when I really got into this band, and it was hard for me to pick an album because like a lot of their albums sounded pretty much the same. And he did a great job going from one band to the next, because even some of the earlier band stuff that he was in, I was a big fan of too. But an album that is a good front to back listen that I would listen to driving around Colorado with, he's got the mountains to the west just looking at you all the time. Transatlanticism by Death Cab for Cutie.
Oh, yeah.
There was mornings I had to be there at work at, 4 a.m. The snow plows are out on the road. It's cold. It had just gotten some fresh powder on the ground, and I'm freezing, and I turn that on, and I'm driving to go open the coffee shop, and I'm putting that Transatlanticism's album on, and as I'm driving in it, it's like the earth is just kind of standing still and waking up, and I'm right there with it. And even during the day on a nice, beautiful, sunshiny day, there's just, and I had a hard time not choosing Plans because I really like that album too. But I got to go with some Death Cab because it's good road tripping music, man.
Yeah. I've got a Death Cab album on my short list, not that one. That's your second album from 2003. That was an important year for your music development. Working at Starbucks.
Yeah.
No, I love that album. I love Death Cab. Any of their 3 kind of big album, or their two big albums, which is Plans and Transatlanticism, are great. Just again, it's a visual, like there's a visual journey, an emotional journey to their sound, and I love it. I find myself listening to it. one of my go-to garage albums when I'm in the garage tinkering, usually tinkering on bikes. Their album "Thank You for Today" is one of my go-tos when I want something kind of, and I think that touches across their entire sound.
Yeah,
and is more, maybe a little bit more, I want to say Cure-esque. Maybe Depeche Mode-esque.
Yeah, I could see that.
So it's a little different than the other two albums, but I find myself listening to "Thank You for Today" more lately. It's one of their newer albums, but yeah, great pick. Love Death Cab. Can't go wrong. I'm going to move into hip hop now. Sweet. So I listen to a lot of harder hip hop. So it doesn't necessarily, when I'm doing a road trip, I am driving. Not a lot of hip hop gets into my rotation because it's usually not great for singing along. But for short drives or in town, hip hop is usually where I start and finish. Like it's hip hop, my local music. When I'm driving down the road, it's usually not. But there are a few in my short list, and specifically a concept album from 2000 from Del the Funky Homo Sapien got together with Dan the Automator, a producer who makes the tracks. And there's lots of urban myth around the album about how it got made. Like one of them is they wrote it, recorded it, and produced it in a week in 2000. And it is a concept album a la like a Pink Floyd album where there's characters throughout it, and it's almost like a movie, and there's a story, although not so much that you can really follow along, but enough to where, like, if there was a cult following like the Gorillaz, people would write fan fiction about the characters. You have these Deltron Zeros in there. The album is Deltron 3030 from 2000, and it is a lot. It's mellower. I like Deltron stuff. It's mellower. It's got some upbeat stuff, but it works well in a road trip environment. It's not like the harder stuff I listen to. And it is one of the great albums to put out there. And it is, as I get to know more and more people listening to hip hop, it is on everybody's short list as one of their favorite albums that I think everyone should listen to. Deltron 3030 from 2000. Great album. They 10 or 15 years later, they did a second one called Event 2. Similarly, very good. But this one's a little more complete, probably because I think the second one, it goes to like skits where there's talking, that are funny. They're part of it. And there's a couple of those in the first one, but in the second album, there's just more of them. So depending on your mood, I find myself skipping some of those sometimes. But they are great. You have like comedians in there like David Cross, the Lonely Island Boys do a thing in Event 2. And it's just fantastic. Joseph Gordon-Levitt does the voiceover for the intro in the second one. So it brings in a lot of famous people, and Damon Albarn does some guest vocals. Cause if Del does a lot of the rapping on your Gorillaz songs that and so it's just really cool. It's just a really good album. One of my favorite hip hop albums. And with hip hop, it can become very personal. So when I have like my family in the car, nobody's mad when this album's on. My whole family loves this album.
Yeah.
So Deltron 3030, that's my number 6.
That's awesome, man.
Trip album.
Yeah, you got me turned on to that. I can remember being in your vehicle with you listening to Deltron together, man. You introduced me and set the vibes with it. There's a lot of lunches. There's a lot of trips to the P. Terry's that we made with that playing, man. And that's true to you, man. And I mean, I love it. I haven't reached for it on my own as much when, since we stopped working together. But when you're together, man, you're getting me turned into that, and I liked it. So, good pick, dude.
Put that in your rotation, man.
Yeah.
Pin that in your Spotify.
Heck yeah. All right. Well, this one is a pick that might make me subject of getting brought to the center of the town hall and having everybody throw Rotten Tomatoes at me for. But I think this was a great album. And I think it was good. And then they turned a little bit after this album. But again, I am a bit of a subject of being raised by music through a vast, I think it was a good library of music at Starbucks. that actually introduced me to some really good music at the time. Starbucks had a little run there
they
was
had
good.
The best scientists in the world working on it.
Yeah. Right. So this album came out when I was working there, and this is when I purchased. But I'm going to go with A Rush of Blood to the Head by Coldplay. This is a front to back album that is very nostalgic for me. This is one that I put on for some commuting to and from work. This is one that I'll put on during a road trip, depending on if I'm feeling it. But it's a great front to back album. It was before, I think, just kind of their decline. Their XY album was pretty cool. I liked that as well. That came out when I was living in Colorado. So there's some nostalgia with that album for me of driving, listening to that, discovering that album. I bought it before I even knew the songs, and I listened to it through the mountains. But A Rush of Blood to the Head is just, it still grabs me. And I think the piano playing in it and the melodies, and that's just a classic album for me. And it's a part of my upbringing.
I can't be mad about that. You know, they kind of were the last Britpop band, you know, on Oasis, Blur, you know, plus some of the other, you know, like even the early days of a Ned's Atomic Dustbin or what's the blanking on the other one they do. Oh, anyway, Britpop. So they're and they brought it to America. I do remember when their album dropped in 2000, that first single, Yellow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just because of sonically what was happening when that album came out, my first thought whenever when I saw that, because there was videos were still happening. I think as I picture it, the first time I remember hearing it was in a video, and you saw the guy walking down singing.
Yeah. Yeah.
My first thought is, this is a Radiohead ripoff. But they quickly departed from that and stayed in the guitar, you know, space. And I think they picked up where U2 left off. Like U2 went off the rails after the Ok Chung Baby. Like after that, like just album after album of just musical shit from U2, just garbage. Mm-hmm. Like their music sucks.
Yeah.
And they're forcing it on people in your iTunes. It's just terrible.
Yeah.
You know, how to dismantle an atomic bomb or what? It's just terrible.
Yeah.
Just terrible.
Yeah.
And so I think they picked up that you know, what U2 left. And so I think people that might have been U2 fans found Coldplay, and they did some good things. I'm not mad about Coldplay.
Yeah, but I feel like I don't
listen to it. Yeah, I didn't really listen to U2, but
their recent stuff has defined too much of them, and I think that album just was their best album. So, and I listen to it a lot, and I'll go back to it from time to time. And it happens when I'm driving a lot. So
I'm down with it. I'm down with it. You know. All right, I am going to pick one that you're just not ready for. I talk about this album, so I have a little bit of music production experience in that I worked with producers. I worked with session people in two different jobs I was in. One of my startups, we built software for people that are in the recording space, literally people that work in the studio. And then I worked for a boutique guitar and amp company running the electronics department and working with a lot of session guitarists and sonics. So I understand a lot of the language of production. And so I say this with just a tiny, the slightest bit of expertise with the way I say this album is, if I wanted to give someone an example of an album that is technically perfect in the way it was produced, it's this album, and that is my number 7 pick. Number 7 pick is Peter Gabriel's So.
Oh, nice.
Put that in wrong. So by Peter Gabriel. So he is, you know, it's the album that has his hits on, yes. But the way the whole album progresses is it fits the mold of what I want in a road trip album. It is a journey. It has some bigger hits, a lot of sing-alongable stuff, but then it takes you into emotional spaces and that sort of stuff. It's all over the place, but it is technically perfect. So if you're in a car especially because sometimes this affects what I'm going to play. What car am I in, and what is the sound system, right? If you're in a car, if you find yourself in a Mercedes S-Class and you're on a road trip, this is the first album I'm playing because it's sonically perfect, right? It doesn't come off as good if I'm in a garbage, sound system or a car that's just loud with a lot of road noise.
90s
so it doesn't
Corolla.
play in the van much because the van, it doesn't have the greatest sound system, and it does pick up a lot of road noise because it's just a big shoebox moving along the wind. But if I'm in a car with a good sound system, I'm in the Toyota Avalon, which are really quiet ride, good sound system. It sounds this is the first album I'm reaching for, but man, it is just perfect top to bottom. Go beyond Sledgehammer, beyond Big Time, which are the two singles off there, and the album, and they're good songs. It is just it's perfectly produced. It's a masterpiece, and the songs are good too. So Peter Gabriel, so that's my 7th pick.
Dude, that's a good one. You snuck that in there. I want to go back and listen. I don't think I've listened to that album and the whole album in my entire life. And those songs, will pop up from here to there. But I need to go check this out, man, because he's awesome. Great musician.
No, and a lot of people forget that story. He was the front man for Genesis. Mm-hmm. Phil Collins was a drummer, and then they went their separate ways. And I'm sure Genesis was popular in England before that, but we didn't really get Genesis in the United States until after that split. So we only know the Genesis of Phil Collins as the front man. But it's a cool story that they both, at least from our perspective in America, became more successful when they split, which is often not the case. So
right,
really
that's
cool.
crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. An album that I've put on when I've driven toward the coast through the spring, as like the Bluebonnets are coming out, sun's shining.
The Texas coast, we should say.
Yeah. There, let's make that clear, because it's very underwhelming once you get there.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna put an album, Mission Bell by Amos Lee, on the list.
Ooh.
It's better than you think when you put it on.
I know the album. It was on heavy rotation for my wife for a little while.
That's awesome. So
that's not a judgment. It's like my wife listens to good music.
Yeah, no, heck yeah, no, that's just great. I love that. And it feels good. It sounds good. Man, it's like just drinking your cup of coffee, cruising to that, making your way toward, the coast. It just fits. It just works. And, he's got a sound that, it's weird because I want to say it's honest, but it's also not. And the reason why it's not is because I think he, had said that he's like a musician second. Like that wasn't his first choice in life. I think he was more of a business guy. And so like, it's crazy that when you listen to this album that like, that's his second, like, golly, we must be really good at whatever you were doing before this. But the singing on it is great. It's just got a texture to it, like just a big chug of chocolate milk. And, it feels good. It's satisfying. It's great, man. And I'm putting it on a road trip, try it out and, see how it sits with you as you're cruising.
And I would consider his sound to be folk music. He's in that new folk space, right? Is that how you would describe it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And which is what we dug into that quite a bit. I love that movement and culminating in Monsters of Folk. I like the Avett Brothers, all that stuff. And my wife was into it too. And so she was actually the one that got me listening to Amos Lee. She discovered him. I'm not sure how, and was like, yeah, you like this guy. And
he kind of came and went, but that album is worth putting on. Try it out. Throw it on a list.
He's got quite a catalog. His last, real release, I'd say, was Dreamland in 2022. So
wow, I disconnected.
You might have to go back and dip into it.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. Is he staying? I haven't listened to it either. I can't spin it right now due to copyright issues.
That's all right.
But my guess is it's still like a folk album. I don't know why he would change. But yeah, Amos Lee. Yeah, no, I like it. I dig it. Good call. All right. Well, as I mention it, this is my next pick because it is. This is one of those albums where I first listened to it when it came out on a road trip. So it's one of those ones where I think we're still buying music at the time and hit the road in 2009 with a common friend of ours, Justin Girdler.
Oh yeah.
We had a road trip for what we were doing for work in our creative space, making content up through Nashville and Chicago, where we were hosting help hosting a conference for artists and creative people.
Super cool.
And so, we're surrounded by mostly musicians and some other types of artists and those sorts of things. And the album I had just bought when we hit the road was I and Lovin' You by the Avett Brothers.
Oh man, great.
Such a banger in that folk movement.
Yeah.
And to this day, it is rare. It is rare for me to go on any kind of road trip that's, like I said, 3-4 hours plus. And this is usually one of the first albums to get played.
That's great.
My family,
I can't believe
my
that
wife
slipped
loves it.
my mind. I can't believe that slipped my mind.
Just a great one. One of those bands where I really didn't branch out beyond this album. And it's one of those ones where I think they were probably lost in the noise of Mumford and Sons taking all the air out of the room with what they were doing. They basically took that folk movement and brought it to the masses, which was good for them. But I think this is in that vein. If you liked Mumford and Sons, I think you'll like the Avett Brothers better, especially this album.
But the other way around in that equation may not work as well. So if you the Avett Brothers, you may not like Mumford and Sons as much.
I would agree. Yeah. So I think I would consider, I always bring them up as an example of a
authenticity
band. Yeah. Not necessarily. Yeah. Like I don't tend to believe them. Like I believe the Avett Brothers. I believe 100%. The Decemberists. I believe, Monsters of Folk. I believe the Fleet Foxes.
Yes.
But when I get to the Avett Brothers, like, I feel like they're impersonating all these bands, and they've done it to a way that brings
Mumford,
it to the masses.
Mumford and Sons,
Mumford and Sons.
Yeah.
So nothing wrong with them. Like I don't hate on them. They're good. Obviously, they're good. They were popular, and I do like some of their songs.
Sure.
But I often use that as an example of you get these niche movements, and occasionally one band rises out of that, and to do so, sometimes have to water down the sound a little bit to bring the mass. And that's just the nature of commercialism, and nothing wrong with it.
Right.
But Avett Brothers, I and Love You is my number 8 pick.
I love that. I love that album. That's a great pick, man. That's really good. What's on my list? Okay, I'm gonna left. 9, 10. 2 more. I'm gonna close out with my Texas, my country stuff. I'm gonna put on.
We're waiting for some country.
I'm gonna put a personal pick on here. I think it's our family's most these last two are both listened to through our family. We've been to the concerts and we've seen them. I'm going to go with a little known, becoming more well known country guy, Parker McCollum, and the album that really did it for us was the Gold Chain Cowboy. If you're unfamiliar with his music, check out his single "To Be Loved by You." And I think this is probably in the 2020s, maybe aside from another artist that I'll share, probably second most sang, by probably Texas frat boys, the loudest, the most is "To Be Loved by You." It's just a song when it starts playing. If you see him in a concert, everybody's singing along with it, and it's just a song that it's catchy.
The biggest hit on the album is "Pretty Heart" by more than double the play count, at least in Spotify, than "Loved by You." "Loved by You" number 2 at 87 million, but "Pretty Heart" at 212 million.
So "Pretty Heart's the one that the girls start melting to.
He looks like he's a good looking SOB. The ladies probably down with.
All right, it's all guys want to be like, all ladies want.
I am totally disconnected from modern country. Not on purpose. I just never comes into the algorithms and not something I listen to. So I'm completely going to trust you on this one because I have no idea about it.
That is just like what's the food that if somebody's cooking and they put it in front of you that you don't really want to eat, but everybody eats it. Or maybe it's an ingredient. What would you say?
Like everybody eats it because everybody loves it, and I feel left out. Why I don't love this?
Yeah. I mean, the two for me are mushrooms. Mushrooms and olives are the two things.
I would say it's probably steak.
Okay.
At most just an average steak at a restaurant, like a mall food, I would say. So like Black Angus or going to Texas Roadhouse or Outback Steakhouse. Like I think people like the masses probably love those steaks, but it's like I can certainly do better at home, and it's not a good value. But I understand why you like it. Yeah. So that's kind of where I am with that kind of stuff. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sonically, what's he sound like? So a country music that I may be familiar with.
Man, that's a really good question.
Compare him to Garth Brooks.
Nah. Like it just doesn't compare.
Okay.
I mean, because I just think that Garth Brooks is like, man, I don't even know how to describe Garth Brooks, but he's like the country pop, like.
Okay, so this is less poppy.
Yeah, this is like the dude who was probably like the frat boy who was aspiring to be a musician, and that made it, and he's singing the songs. Yeah, he's got some twang, and he's got the lyrics that match the country lyrics to try to be the song of your story of the South. When you're listening to Beer Drinking, The Girl That Broke My Heart, that kind of stuff. Love by You is just a relationship song, and that's why I think people on both sides, guys and girls, are singing it so loudly, is it just kind of speaks to the challenges of relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Parker McCollum, Gold Chain Cowboy.
Yeah.
That's your number 9 pick.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, that's what I need. More. I need that exposure to country music.
And we put this on like when we need music in the car, all 6 of us.
Yeah.
That people aren't shouting. We put this on, put that on, and this is the one that we can all agree with.
Nobody's mad.
Nobody's mad.
So it's the Deltron 3030 for us. That's kind of the go. I think everyone can get along with that. Or Cease to Begin by Band of Horses would be if I want to get away from hip hop. No, good. Okay, so my number 9 pick, kind of in the folk. I'm going back to back folks here. And discovered it similar to Band of Horses, listening to NPR's All Songs Considered, which for a lot of music I've listened to in the last 15, 20 years, I was introduced to it there. And they played White Winter Hymnal as the sample, and it has these layers and harmonies and melodies and echoes in it. And I'd never heard anything like it when they played it. And so again, I was like, that is fresh and that is new, and I'm in. I want more of that. So that was one of the last albums I bought before we went to streaming, and that is the Fleet Foxes' self-titled album.
Yeah.
Really just, it is, I think it's less approachable than a lot of the folk, I think even the Decemberists might be more approachable because it is so different. But man, if I played this for someone who is older and is like into old school folk and is a purist, we're just flat picking guitars and maybe some banjo, we're not bringing in other instruments and we're being very subtle with the drums.
Yeah.
If I played this for them, they would love it. They would absolutely love it. And I have played this for people who listen to older music and haven't gotten into stuff, and they love this album top to bottom. Really one of those albums that's just great to sing along with. My family likes this one as well. And just got some absolute bangers in there. And really, if I'm out in nature, if I'm driving through a lot of nature, this album hasn't spun on the last few road trips because just the nature of what I'm doing because I work during the day. I'm driving a lot at night. So even like kind of a bummer. I drove through the mountains from Oregon to California in great weather, Tuesday into Wednesday. Drove for a little bit on Tuesday, a little bit early Wednesday morning, but I was out of it. I was in the Central Valley when the sun rose.
Oh, wow.
And I'm bummed out because the skies were clear. And if you've ever driven on I-5 between Redding and Medford, Oregon, Mount Shasta is just there for like an hour. And this time of year, it's awesome. Covered in snow. It's this perfect little volcano peak. And I was bummed I didn't get to see it. I love seeing Mount Shasta, but I was going in the middle of the night, so I didn't get to see it. But when I'm driving through beautiful scenery and stuff like that, Fleet Foxes, their self-titled album from 2008 is my number 9 pick for road trip albums. Man,
that's a great take, dude. You got me tuned into them, and you're spot on with that. And being introduced to it was great. I could see it being with a buddy, and you're making your way, and you've got a ways to go, and you're kind of reaching in catalogs, and you're taking turns, and then it's your turn, and you're like, hey, you heard this? And the dude's like, no. Like, you put it on, it's like introducing it and hearing it again for the first time, or hearing it for the first time, like. That's a great road trip. That's a good one, man. That's a good pick. Yep. Deep in your draft, man. Good job. Love it.
They're good. What do you got? Final pick.
This is again right on the same lines, but this is probably like the modern Garth Brooks. But maybe at some point you might kind of get there a little bit, because of your love for the Post Malone and some of their work together.
Yeah.
You've probably heard and you probably know more of his music than you realize. But I'm going to go with Morgan Wallen's Dangerous album. It's got so many of his hits on there, and he's really become one of those artists within the country music community where, he's pop. And he's stadium selling and, sold out tours and all that stuff. But he's put together some pretty good current, listenable pop. I don't know, depending on who you are. There's probably plenty of people out there that think it's complete garbage. And to a degree, it might be. He's like the Bud Light of, going to pick up beers. Like, everybody's going to be drinking it.
Important to know, the most popular beer in America right now is Modelo.
Oh,
it is the best-selling beer.
Wow, that's a shift.
I don't know why I know that,
but interesting. But I'm going with Morgan Wallen. I'm
familiar with the name. I'm sure I've heard some songs, and he's approaching 1 billion on a couple of these tracks. Double album. Many in the hundreds of millions of plays. So this is country's coming up a little bit. The kids are listening to the country. Our generation, if you listen to country, you were because you lived in the country. But I think the suburban kids are listening to the country.
Yeah, the song on this album that I first attached to, and I didn't even really know him and his music that much. And my wife is the one that actually got me into him. And she put on YouTube his video for Cover Me Up. And it just kind of caught me. And I thought, man, okay, this is cool. And then the next one was Whiskey Glasses. And that's just one, that's just fun to sing along with. It's quirky. It's silly. Country music always puts a spin on these double meanings, whiskey glasses, right? You're drinking so much that you're seeing through the whiskey glasses. Like they always do a play on words.
Beer goggles. Yeah.
Beer goggles. And so
that's a double entendre.
Yeah.
That's what they call that.
That's country music is just full of it. So
I tell people all the time, country music and rap music are the same. It is really just someone telling the story of what they're seeing, but with a lot of it's not actually what's happening in their life. It may be what they aspire to, or maybe what they would like, or what they dream, or maybe it's, what they've seen other people experience. So it's just kind of what's happening on the streets or what's happening on the farm, versus really getting into trying to get deep into the soul of people. But it sometimes it does, but it's just, when you see people that I don't, listen to country and I don't like rap and rappers who don't like country, it's like, it's the same music, bro. It's simple. And you're just, painting a picture of what's happening or what you would like to happen or what could happen. You're not getting into deep issues, a few outliers aside. It's just simple music. We did that music through the ages. As you kind of age out, people get to this space in life where they go down the unpretentious route or they go down the sophisticated route, and country and rap are unpretentious. Just listen to it.
Yeah.
I dig it.
Right on.
I dig it. All right. So I'm going all-time classic here. I could go a couple different routes, but I'm going to go with this one. This album, not only does it play like a movie, it actually was made into a movie because it is almost a rock opera. So it's like watching a movie when you listen to this album. And that is from 1979. That's Pink Floyd's The Wall. Awesome. It is the story. If you haven't listened, very few people that I know have, apart from some older people, have really sat down and listened to this album. Most people will, and I think it's fair, that will say that Dark Side of the Moon is their best album. It is one of the best-selling albums of all time, Dark Side of the Moon, released 2 years before this. But Pink Floyd, I think I put Animals on there. The Wall is a rock opera. It's when I had the CD, it was 2 CDs. And it is a story. It is in a linear fashion. It's basically starts with a big opener, cold open, big rock, it's the rock show. And then it goes through this kid's life from birth, literally from birth, all the way until kind of adolescent years and rebellion and being judged and just kind of mad at my parents and mad at the system. And it's essentially Roger Waters' take on his life growing up post World War II, because England was pretty much destroyed in World War II, and their fathers went off to war, and they were kind of left to themselves, and they had to grow up in that. And so it's kind of that story. It's really neat, but at the same time overlaying. So it's kind of 2 stories happening at the same time. My life growing up in England and then becoming a rock star, and he creates this character. His name is Pink, and it's interesting. Yeah, it's a story. So you're watching a movie while you're driving down the road, but you're listening to an album. Yeah. So Pink Floyd, The Wall is one of those that I pretty much will only spin this when I'm driving by myself or my wife is tuned out because she's sleeping or something like that, or the kids are sleeping. It is a movie, and my family doesn't really enjoy Pink Floyd. It is an acquired taste, I will admit. But this album I love it, and it's long too. So by the time you finish this movie, you've gobbled up some miles. Yeah. So it really helps pass the time. But all-time great album. I love Pink Floyd, and I would say this is my favorite Pink Floyd album, even though I think they have a couple of other albums that are better. I would say are better albums. This is my favorite just because it was my introduction to Pink Floyd, and it was my introduction to real rock music as I kind of pulled away from my parents because my brother introduced me to this. So that's my number 10 pick for road trip albums, and that is Pink Floyd, The Wall.
Awesome. Great one to end on.
Couple honorable mentions I'll throw out there that almost made it. By the way, Red Hot Chili Peppers is often spun. Bleed American from Jimmy Eat World is a banger. Pinkerton from Weezer is one I go to a lot. If it's quiet, depending on the mood, Morning Phase by Beck is just nice. Quiet, noodly album. I love it. And Born Like This from MF Doom. You dipped into Wilco. I would have picked Sky Blue Sky. You dipped into Bon Iver. I would have picked 22 a Million. Dulcinea by Toad the Wet Sprocket, almost always on rotation on a road trip for me. So those are my honorable mentions.
Heck yeah.
You got it?
10 by Pearl Jam. And then what's the album by Stone Temple Pilots that has like the little like Chinese looking menu, little kid flying on a dragon? I can't think of it.
I think it's called
Is Purple? That it? Yeah. It has Leaving on a Southern Train song. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, the album's Purple. Yeah.
That album. I got to go with some. Alice in Chains Unplugged is on there for me.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's on there for me.
I would put Dashboard Confessionals Unplugged on there.
Oh, nice.
And Jay-Z's
Very
Unplugged.
good.
Jay-Z's Unplugged is...
Dude, Dashboard Confessionals Unplugged. That is a gem.
Yeah. It's hidden
Great.
gem.
That is.
My
So
wife will
good.
put that on because I know that's top of her road trip albums list, and I'll enjoy it when I'm not in control of the music, and she's rocking that. So awesome! Love road trips. Great time to listen to music. I also like listening to new music on a road trip by myself. So that's why I consume, because I'm quiet. I can really rock out.
Do you feel like, maybe this is a bad take, do you feel like the road trip album is in some kind of endangered species list due to culture and podcasting and audiobooks, and where maybe what you might see within, maybe not your kids, but kids, because your kids are built different, because you did a heck of a job dadding them, just this idea of picking an album, putting it on, letting it play, being with it, feeling it, taking the time it needs, allowing yourself to stick with it and not like just be so shifty in your emotional focus to just, okay, I'm going to go with this next one, or I'm going to turn this off, or I'm going to listen to this, or I'm going to you think it,
I hear you. And I think that was looking like it was going to be true, especially for people that would consider themselves real music fans, because we were adapting. I think you went through the struggle of, listening to an album was standard because you had to put the disc in the CD player. Before that, you had to put the tape on, and you had to put the record on before that. And so it was more of a hassle to go, skipping a track, sure, on a CD, that was easy. Skipping a track on a tape was more difficult.
Yeah, but fast forwarding.
On a record, it was pretty simple. But switching to a different album or artist was a bigger lift. That's why you had those disc changers later. Right. But even that was a headache. Yeah. And so I think a lot of people, once they had a streaming service, or even when they had an iPod full of their music, it was novel to be able to jump around and be your own DJ. And I think for a minute there is like, is the album going to die?
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
I think the album is making a comeback. And I think even just now, Kendrick Lamar dropped an album that is holistically an album front to back. It is an album, and it is worth a listen front to back. And even some of the pop music, like your Chappelle Roan, she's putting together an album, and she wants people to consume the album. Post Malone's country thing, it is an album. I think the current music being released, albums are still a thing, and I think the people that are tuned in to the current music being released, especially if they're attached to a specific genre, the album matters again. I think you're right. For a minute, it was like, is the album going away? I think we're getting past that.
Yeah, and that was maybe my concern of seeing how easy it is to put together the playlist, the ease of it, like you're describing, playlist replacing what can be found through a whole album listen.
Right.
Because some of those other songs, they're not good on the first 10 listens. But then eventually a song can grab you, and it can be one of those ones that takes that time to kind of work through, that becomes just a staple in your, at the
top of the discussion, we talked about August and Everything After. I think that album might fail if it's released 5-6 years ago, assuming the music is contemporary, but that type of album where it has one single, the hit single, that the first single off the record, Mr. Jones, is sonically quite different from pretty much everything else on the record.
Yeah.
And so if, in the age of albums starting to go away, if I go then open up Spotify and that album's new and I play that song and then I play some of the other songs, the ease of leaving the album and just going and playing something else or repeating that song, it might make that album not take, because it's such a different song.
Yeah.
I think of Blur. When you think of those albums, remember when you bought used CDs?
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
Go there and the albums that were there was just tons of them there because it had one song on it. Yeah. And it was almost because that one song
got all the radio play.
Too different from the rest of the album.
That too. Yeah.
Not that the album wasn't good. Yeah. And so I think that is starting to go away. I think the album has come back. But if I get kids, it might be tough to get younger people to go and listen to music that predates them and listen to a whole album. They might not
go back.
Like, I don't think like Bon Jovi's Slippery When Wet. It's a good album front to back.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But they're not going to go back and listen to that. They're just going to listen to Living on a Prayer and Dead or Alive. And like, that's about it. And so
it's fun to try to be a dad and try to get your kids to listen to that stuff, because you are like in full dad mode where you are like, it's like this full circle moment of when your dad put on the track and he was like totally in it. And you're sitting there in the seat next to him like, he's being such a dad right now.
I've learned to let my kids lead. I'll try to throw them some stuff, every once in a while.
Yeah.
But they're at the age where they're not interested in that. So to that effect, I'm going to throw in a second episode weekly with AJ to start. And we'll see it later. Where AJ, tell me about the new music. So we'll record that next week and see how that goes. So we'll be throwing another episode out there.
Awesome.
So I can let my kids tell me.
Dude, that's so cool.
So as we're getting close to time here, I want to get to our weekly homework for this week, and I want to this is a challenge for everybody. I've done this one time. I went to a movie in a theater by myself. Have you ever done it?
No.
I want to do it. I want you to do it. And because, you came to my house the other night and your kids are young and just where you are is very challenging for you to sit down and see a really good movie.
Yeah.
This movie is still out in theaters. I think you'll be able to still find it. Maybe not, but I know it's near me, and I'm going to go see it here in Northern California tomorrow by myself. Just because of the nature of what my schedule looks like tomorrow. I have some time to kill. So you have a week. You might have to go late, but I want you to go see The Brutalist by yourself. I'm going to go see it by myself. It is a movie. It's by all appearances, it's a movie you're going to have to lock into. It's going to
demand it.
Your kids aren't going to want to go. My wife will not want to go see this, but it is a Golden Globe Best Picture, and so it's on there, and I want to see it. And it's not in streaming yet,
right?
And part of that is I want you to see it. I want to talk about this movie with somebody.
Okay.
And once it's out streaming, it's going to be harder for you, just given the stage of life you're in. Harder for you to watch it at home. Than theater. So you have one next week. Go to a movie by yourself or watch The Brutalist. I'm going to try and go see it tomorrow.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's it.
Yeah, buddy.
Really cool. I got some albums now. I'm going to update my Spotify based on this conversation.
Sweet.
But happy road tripping, everybody. Yeah. And thanks for listening. And, might I add, subscribe or like or do something. I don't know, whatever you're listening. So rock on.